Welcome, everybody, to an exciting Monday night, President's Day night on Zenny 62 Live. And once again, we have back our special guest, my former boss, the man I've learned the most from in my occupational career. And hey, you know, uh, I remember I remember one thing. This man is the former mayor of Oakland, Elihu Harris. Elihu, thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm happy to be here. It's always good to join you. You always talk about timely topics and current things going on in our worlds, and I can participate in the conversation.
Thank you, and I'm honored to have you because, among other things, for those of you who may not know, Mayor Harris was when you were elected to the California Assembly. You were the youngest to ever ran, right, and won.
That's ran one, yeah.
Yeah,
There might have been other people who ran, but they didn't win.
right. I mean, anybody can run, but yet to run and win is something else.
Right.
So that's something
Exactly.
else. Something else indeed. Uh, I want to start this off. We were talking off camera about what I contend is this crazy place we're in as a country, um, and given Elihu's wide political background and he can help us think about this, but also talk about Oakland politics and what I call the age of Trump. But first of all, what are your thoughts about the horrible school shooting, the president's response, and then of course this indictment that came down, and how is that affecting us, or is it? It was affecting. Or maybe it's just me. What do you think?
Well, it's clear, regardless of who the president is, it's the same response. An abhorrent tragedy. This shall never happen again. Never again. We've been hearing it, for decades, and yet we do very little about it. And it's not just the president; it's the Congress, it's the American people, because they put up with it. And then they say, well, somehow it's an aberration. It's not going to reoccur. We can have weapons of mass destruction in private hands because it's the Second Amendment right, and the consequences are incidental, natural, or an exception. And don't worry about it because next time we're going to handle it differently. We're going to hire more guards at the school. We're going to get the FBI to correct their mistakes and pay attention when someone calls. But we never really deal with the problem. We deal with the symptoms, and we never deal with them adequately.
When you were mayor of Oakland, how was it different in terms of the way we dealt with assault weapons? Because you were mayor of Oakland from 1991 to 1990. Well, I like to say 99. It was really 98, but
It was actually, the new mayor takes on in '99.
yeah.
It's just after the year, but you're elected.
You know what it is, Elihu? I'll be candid with you. I hated that. I hated it. Okay, I didn't want to secede to Jerry Brown. I didn't, even though I voted for him, but I had no choice.
Hey. Yeah. Well, hey, and now he's the governor. He's been the attorney general and governor since then.
How about that, man? But anyway, you were saying. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, what I think what's happening is that there's limited things you can do at the local government level. Even Chicago has very stringent gun laws. The gun comes from Indiana, which is right across the border, 30 miles away. You have to deal with it at the national level. We can do gun buybacks. We can, step up enforcement, a lot of things. But those things are ineffective when people use guns not just to protect themselves, but they use it as offensive weapons of destruction. We didn't have mass shootings. We had shootings of police officers. We had shootings, of gang members. And all those things were facilitated by the ease and the availability of weapons. And I think at some point, you got to say, how do we protect ourselves? In our homes, fine, have a pistol, have something that will be preventative. But when you allow machine guns and assault rifles and all these other things, when you have inconsistent laws, when you have a pistol only at 21, when you have a rifle at 18, including a weapon of mass destruction, it's just illogical. And you have politicians who are worried about being in office, that they would rather be in office and do what's logical, because the NRA is so powerful, both its membership and its money. Then how do you have a chance as an individual citizen and try to be rational, not extreme? are just rational. We need to protect ourselves. We should do something to make sure that we're not going to be victimized by weapons rather than protected by weapons. You can't even have that discussion without a politician scared to lose the next election.
Why do you think that is? Why can't we have that discussion? What's changed between now and when you were mayor and we had I think the assault weapons ban by President Clinton, right?
Because then Reagan had been shot and people decided that we needed to look at those things because of Brady. But as time goes on, memories get short, and lest we forget, we forget. And now, we don't really do that anymore. We see people keep getting killed, whether it's Columbine or, Orlando or Las Vegas or, Parkland, Florida. It's all the same. We see the killings. We think that what happened at Sandy Hook, again, is an aberration, and that we talk about doing something about it. We declare never again, but we're on to the next news cycle. They're gone. Forget about them. It won't happen again. If it does, it won't happen again. Sometimes people want to deal with ignorance rather than deal with facts. And we talk about fake news. That's real news. 17 young people and their teachers were killed last week. Mm-hmm. It was the real Valentine's Day massacre.
Yeah.
But we don't think about it that way. We think about it as, wow, that's horrible. Wow, it was a crazy guy that got a gun and shot somebody. But it doesn't happen every day. Increasingly, it's happening every day.
Oh, and then, by the way, it's okay that he was white supremacist. I mean, that kind of didn't even move the needle anymore. It's like, oh yeah. Right. It's like, we expected that.
Yeah. What happened at that church in Texas, and then what happened at the church in Charlotte, South Carolina. What does it take to shock people into action? Even when people's own children are killed, mm-hmm. They want to protect the Second Amendment rather than protect their children. There is just no logic in this to me.
No, you're right. And I'm going to read a comment that Barry Lee, one of my moderators, just put it in. Another one, Joseph Bensman, says amen. Then Barry Lee says Barry Lee writes that, he writes, what bothers me, this is Barry Lee saying this, or writing this, about Trump is his tweet where he says the FBI was to bust looking into collusion instead of the Florida shooter. Oh, he says, what bothers Barry Lee is the fact that he tweeted about collusion and from Russia instead of the Florida shooter, and he said he had no clue how the FBI works, and so I believe another person chimes in and says 86 in Stockton, Cleveland school shooting started the AK-47 ban, and Kevin KD claims the AR-15 sells too well for Congress to ban it, and he says the weapons industry is way too profitable for rifle ownership to be outlawed. I challenge that one, but that's another story. Hey,
Congress could not even ban bump stocks.
True.
which was a weapon, which allowed them to make an ordinary gun into a weapon of mass destruction. Mm-hmm. At some point, again, people can continue to be illogical, but there are things that they can do. We can't even debate what we need to do, even as the first step. We don't even take the first step. And when we did take the first step, we retracted it in the face of overwhelming evidence that it was having a positive effect on minimizing weapons of mass destruction.
And again, I asked the question, I think I talked over you, and I apologize. I was asking, how do we get from where we used to be able to talk, maybe I'm being nostalgic, about how to solve problems to today, where it seems like we're talking past each other?
First of all, we become a divided society where nobody wants to be in the middle. Everybody's looking for the extreme, left or right. I'm right, you're wrong. We have no common ground. We have no basis for discussion. A second degree is sacrosanct. What you want is unreasonable and impinges upon my rights. All these things are contradictions to the concept of common sense. We got a problem. How do we deal with that problem? We don't deal with it. We don't have a choice. The Second Amendment gives me the right to have any weapon I want. We already get banned machine guns, so why can we ban machine guns without not automatic weapons? It's just irrational. We are afraid. And politicians are so afraid of doing something that's right because they're worried about losing office, that's a real threat to democracy.
You know, that's even goes to something that I don't want. Robert Bob said to me the other day. He said that with respect to municipal finance, you have people just doing deals now, but they don't do any analysis. So it just seems like there's this whole rush to. I don't know how you would describe it. Just maybe do something that is inefficient and unprofessional. I'm getting a lot of comments here. One of them says, Joseph Bismuth says, hopefully, I'm going to read these comments and I want to turn to something that you and I have never talked about, and that's the Riders case. And anyway, Joseph Bismuth says, hopefully the movement, which is starting from these brave teens in Florida, helps the Democratic grassroots movement to take down these weak-minded Republicans who won't act on the obvious gun problem. That begs the question, Elihu, do you think that this seeming uprising of teens will help? I mean, there's 2 rallies planned already. One for one for March 24th. It's a March for Life in Washington, and the other April 19th, which is a walkout of schools called National Walkout for gun prevention. What do you think? Is this? I mean,
dramatization symbolized, but only taking people out in elections has consequence. And I don't care if the Democrats or Republicans. What the young people said was, we don't care if it's Democrat or Republican. We want to know where you stand on this issue. Are you someone who wants to solve the problem, or are you part of the problem? Everyone in Congress needs to be asked that question, and voters need to hold them accountable. Not will you do everything you can to eliminate, will you do some basic things, background checks? Will you make sure that the private sales also have background checks? Will you make sure the people on the no-fly list don't have weapons? There are things that everybody almost agrees is common sense. Then fear takes over, ideology takes over, and common sense goes out the window.
Ms. Barry Lee says, look, I'm a gun owner, but I have no need for an AK gun. My pistol is all that I have, says Barry Lee. He says, I need all I need for personal protection, Barry Lee says. He says AK guns should be banned, but guns don't kill people, people kill people. And then Joseph Bismuth says, and Barry Lee, that tweet shows how self-absorbed the president is, talking about President Trump. Trump is thinking about himself, he says, in that tweet calling out the FBI, not helping the kids who suffered in the shooting last week. And so I'm going to move to, the reason why I'm asking about the Riders case is because we never talked about how the Oakland police got into that situation. And I bring up the Oakland police in all this because it, in a sense, has to do with, public safety, guns, and violence. Every time someone thinks about violence prevention, you think about calling the police. How did we get, tell my viewers, so I don't mischaracterize it, what is the Riders situation? What was it about?
Well, the Riders situation was there was sort of underground, undercover group of police officers who kind of did their own vigilante justice. They were sworn to secrecy in the brotherhood. They took action in their own hands. They would often plant drugs on people who they believed to be drug dealers, and then prosecute and testify against them in trial. My former law partner, John Burris, basically broke up that the Riders group, and quite frankly, it exists in many police departments in some form or another around the country. Well, people believe that the justice system is too lenient, not strong enough, and therefore they're going to be justice because they've been empowered. But that's the whole mentality that some of the police officers have, not most, but some, where not only are they a brotherhood, but they're a brotherhood of vigilantes who do what their brand of justice is, rather than that to which most of us believe we should be held accountable. And I know sometimes people think that vengeance and all of that is superior, and I understand that feeling. But most of us are able to suppress it and simply try to enforce laws, or in some cases increase penalties for whatever. But we don't want to go out and try to just wipe out an institution that basically keeps us from being anarchy.
Hey, so I'm curious. A week ago tonight, Quentin Killian was on, and he said something that made me think. He said it before, and I like your reaction to it with respect to the writers. He said that, think about it, Zenny. We've been, and we were talking, he said, we've been in a generation under federal oversight, or if I'm, and he said, yet we've had police officers that have been hired, come up through the system, and left, and never been trained in any other different way. Is he right?
Well, I think there's a need for constant training and upgrade. Back in the 50s and 60s, Oakland Police Department used to hire racist cops from the South who were so-called black experts. They had a different word, but nevertheless, that word entailed they would come out here, they would do whatever was necessary to keep blacks in place. And that started.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Relationship.
Huh. I didn't know that. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh, no, I went to Alabama, Mississippi, wherever. And that started the poor relationship between the black community and the police officers. Police officers were there to enforce laws, not to protect lives, and certainly to enforce whatever they thought were appropriate laws affecting poor blacks. So I think in the final analysis, we have to have respect for the law. That respect also has to be earned. It can't be respect that can be demanded. We see what happens when those circumstances occur. People disrespect, they go to guerrilla warfare, they become the SLA, they become the different organizations that believe that they have to fight the police rather than respect the police. And for someone who's been in a position of having oversight over the police, I want my police to be respected. And I want the police to respect the people that they serve. I want them not to take unreasonable risks. But if anybody already leading the effort against assault with police officers, who would want to be a police officer called out at night to a domestic struggle or just to a dark alley somewhere where noise was heard and have to face a weapon of mass destruction when you have a sidearm and certainly you may be assaulted or you may be in fact ambushed? I mean, who would want to be a law enforcement officer in a society where that's the rule rather than an exception for an officer riding alone in a car?
We're talking with former Oakland Mayor Elihu Harris and about the Riders case. Got to ask you a question that, well, impacts today with respect to the Riders case, but let me just throw it right out there. If you were mayor again, would you retain the current police chief?
I wouldn't hire the current police chief.
Wow, okay. Go on. Why not? Why not?
Well, I'd like to have someone who has a lot more familiarity with the city. Certainly, I'd like to have someone with a stronger record of community policing. This woman came from Chicago, where she was sort of an internal affairs person, and that's great, but I want somebody who's going to make sure the police know the people they're serving, know the neighborhood they're patrolling, know who's good, who's bad, who's ugly, and be able to enforce the law with prevention rather than reaction. I don't need the cop to get there after somebody's been shot. I need somebody who's going to say, hey, we got a problem going on here. There's gang warfare going on in this part of the city. There's a gang that's operating here. There are some young people who are out of school all day. They're burglarizing homes. I want intelligence. I want statistics. I want prevention. I don't want somebody going to come and clean up the mess after it's been created. I don't want a mess in the first place.
What are your thoughts in that context about the new Oakland Police Commission? By the way, Mike Desperos is on it.
Oh, great. Well, remember, that's my guy, Mike.
Yeah. Mike was Mike was my fellow partner in crime working for Elihu.
Right, exactly.
So that was fun. Yeah,
well, Mike has a distinguished career as a prosecutor, certainly as the head of the state bar's officer trial counsel, and he's a serious and fair guy. And he knows he worked for the police. He had respect for the police. I think the police had respect for him. But he also ultimately wanted to do what is right and what is just. And that's got to be the overwhelming goal for anyone involved in law enforcement, whether you are a mayor or a city council member, a police chief, or patrol officer, or a citizen. we want to make sure justice is done, that the first thing people have but the police is respect. If fear is the only thing that we have protecting our police officers or our community, we're in big trouble.
Is that the case right now, though? That we have that fear?
I think we're getting back to that. We still have some of these gangs. They're not. Some of them are no longer dominated by drugs. They're just dominated by illegal activity. It can be drugs. It can be robberies. It could be carjacking. And quite frankly, we don't have enough police officers to defend a community with homelessness and poverty like Oakland. If we can't get our handle on police-community relations, where the police and the community are partners in identifying problems and finding solutions.
I got to ask the main question here that sticks out there. I've asked it of you before. How's the mayor doing now? Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf.
I like Libby, but I think she's a cheerleader. I think that she works on some program problems, like Oakland Promise. That's something that's very important to her. But I'm not sure that she's really out there making the tough decisions, reordering priorities, acting and thinking strategically. And it's a tough job. I think it's one of the toughest jobs you can have in politics, being mayor of Oakland. I've talked to mayors in other cities, smaller cities, larger cities, and they all have pretty much the same attitude. Wow, you're the mayor of Oakland? So I don't want to be overly critical because it's a tough job, but I think she could do better, and I think she ought to ask for help. I think she ought to, again, be more strategic in dealing with many of these issues. And again, if you're not strategic, then you're reactionary. And I think right now, Oakland, whether it's the homeless problem, the illegal dumping, the Raiders, the A's, the Warriors, you're not going to keep all of these things. Some of it's economic, some of it you have no choice over. But I think you have to anticipate these things, and you have to work strategically to address them and make sure there are options. When you have no options, that means again you are stuck with the consequences other people created choose.
Hey, right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are 7 candidates for mayor now. And
I don't know. You tell me, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
People who announced it, because nobody's filed.
Oh, no. Well, they filed, the 301s and the 501s, right? But but that's, and I'm actually typing going to the website now to see if there's been any updates. The last person that I said was running again in my video, which I got to put out on email list better than I have, is Nancy Sidebotham. She's back running a third time. Or is it I lose my count. I don't know if it's a third time, a fourth time, or a 400th time. I mean, she's perennially...
Well, Nancy's a very nice person. I know she's frustrated, but when people don't take your candidacy seriously, you need to find a candidate who you take seriously and get behind that candidate, because in my experience, and certainly my perspective, I don't think Nancy has a chance of winning, but she has the right to run. I don't reject or disrespect that in any way. But I suspect that you really want to see, is there a serious candidate like Nasser De La Fuente? Well, he's been out of politics a while. I don't know if he can raise the money and put together the organization. He might have been able to do it 5-10 years ago, but I don't know that he can do it now. So those are the kind of things in my mind that need to be addressed and need to be looked at, because that is something that any of the candidates that are out there, and I have not heard of all of them, but none to my knowledge, I believe is a serious threat to the incumbent mayor.
Yeah, they're right now, as I understand it, Libby is, unless there's been, I'm scrolling down through the information right now, and I'm almost there. I'm about maybe 10 seconds away from opening it up. But unless there has been a shocking development right now, and I see this is the list, and I don't see one. Here's the list of people running for mayor now. Ken Houston, Saeed Kamaruz, Christina Molina, the incumbent Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, Nancy Sidebotham, Marshawn Tamon, never heard that name, have you? And Cedric Trope, and that's it.
Now, tell me, do you think any of those people are serious? You have Ignacio on that list.
If you had Ignacio on the list, it would give it some semblance of a possible challenger, but...
At least you have somebody who's been elected.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a wild card, okay?
And Ignacio has been elected citywide. He's only been elected in the weakest district in terms of voter turnout in the city. So again, putting together an organization that's citywide, raising the money, and putting together enough troops to make the phone calls and knock on the door and to get out the vote, those are the things that matter in winning elections.
I got to ask you on the matter of talking about running for mayor and politics of Oakland. We had a situation very recently that involved a friend of mine, Oakland, a friend of yours, Oakland Councilmember Desley Brooks, and against Elaine Brown. And I want to know as much as you know, what you thought about that situation.
I don't know anything. I've heard many different perspectives on what happened. I think that the city was not represented very well in the civil action. I certainly don't think that was a case of elder abuse. These are two women who I both know and like, who have both very aggressive, take no prisoners personalities. My understanding was that there was actually no blows exchanged, but rather there was agitated action, and that Elaine fell over a chair. And Debbie moved at her aggressively, and she backed up, fell over a chair. Now, I don't know what the court transcripts say in terms of what evidence there was of a blow actually being struck, witnesses, or the like. But I would say overall, the $3.7 some odd million plus punitive damages is almost unheard of, where there is no direct, intentional affliction of physical and or emotional distress. They were arguing. And I know Elaine argues, and I know Desley argues, and they might have gotten carried away. But for the city, they have to pay that kind of a damage. And for it to be a case of elder abuse, I think begs the question.
Is it a case of where we don't have people who intervene? I call them the grown-ups anymore because, I mean, like, I remember that time at the fundraiser, you got mad at me for writing about the issue with the old Oakland housing, and everybody crowded around. This is before I worked for Elihu, and I was like, "Oh man, he's really mad," So Larry Reed came in, he got us together, and that's how I wanted. Yeah, I think I personally like Desley. She's always been great to me, and she's got a powerful constituency. What candidly, and I want your reaction to this, what I resent most is how I'm gonna call it what I call it now. I call it the white mainstream media. Okay, that seems intent on trying to take her out all the time, and no one pays attention to them. They don't think they really get it. Do you? Am I?
Well, look, I like Desley, but Desley doesn't do herself favors sometimes with the attitude and the anger that she sometimes displays. Some people like it, but I don't think it serves her well. It certainly does not serve her well in terms of her relationship with her colleagues on the council. I don't think it serves her well when it comes to the ability to get things done and getting 4 other votes in order to get a measure passed or to get funds expended. But that's different in terms of her effectiveness versus her intent. I think Desley, by and large, wants to do good things. And I think that she wants to serve the people, particularly disadvantaged and the poor and the flatlands of her district. But I think that, again, sometimes she could be more productive by going at them with more collaboration and less confrontation.
Given that we're talking about that she has a challenger, his name is Lauren Taylor. I've never heard of him. Do you think that he's got a chance?
Not based on what I know, but again, I don't know what the level of anger is in her district. I don't know how much money or how many people will come out and work against her. I do know this, that often when voters are confronted with the known versus the unknown, even as bad as the known may be to them, they'll vote for it because they don't want to make it step this backwards. Do no harm is the kind of way that things mean. And I believe that basically if people don't know her challenger and they've never seen him, met him, know anything about him, they'll vote for Desley. But, again, it's early, and by next summer, when the election starts in earnest, and ranked choice voting takes place, it might be different.
Hey, I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about a conversation I had with Steve Lowe, he was on my show Tuesday. We had a
Mm-hmm.
great time talking. I mean,
Right.
I didn't know that he was essentially one of the creators of old Oakland housing.
Right. Right.
In old Oakland, you know. And we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about John B. Williams, and he said it was. He
Mm-hmm.
said Oakland then was different because you had a set of officials where you could go to and you could feel like something could get done, and he included you in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
how did we change, in your view?
Well, two things happen. One, I think, well, I support strong mayor. I don't think the mayors that we had, by and large, have been particularly strong. I don't think they've been oriented by agenda and by getting things done during their term in office. I think that a lot of people who are running have been in office too long. Now they got tired of the major purpose in office, staying in office, rather than getting something done during their term in office. Now, I don't believe in term limits, but I think ultimately the voters have not held their elected officials accountable. They've understood, and I do understand, the limited resources, their institutional problems that are very difficult, if not impossible, to solve. But at some point, you know that when you run for office, or you should, and you really need to come in with an idea about how you're going to solve these long-term, sometimes intractable problems.
Given that, and given the fact that as I look at this, what I'm looking at right now is I've got the Public Ethics Commission page open right here, okay? And it's got the candidates for city auditor. We've got no listing of anybody running right now, nothing. City Council, District 2, we've got Abel Guillen, the incumbent, and Nikki Bass, who's a community activist. Have you met Nikki at all? Okay, so we've got in City Council. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But those same people kind of community activists ran before. And you're a community activist, then I notice you. It's almost like those trees make a sound when it falls in the forest. Now nobody hears.
So we've got, and then Oakland City Council District 4, Annie Campbell, Washington has no challenger. No one.
Right.
And in Oakland Council District 6, we have Desley Brooks and Lauren Taylor. Then we have School District Director. There's no one running for District 2. No one running in District 4. No one running in District... Well, excuse me. I take that back. There is a District 6 candidate. And that is Shanthi Gonzalez.
Yeah.
No,
I think isn't that the incumbent?
Yes. And that's it. What are your thoughts about the Oakland School District? Should we... Or why can't we, and I think you and I have talked about this before, but it bears repeating, just get rid of the director and start all over? I know the city doesn't have that kind of control, but shouldn't it?
Two things. One, in the past, you had school boards that were manned by the best and brightest in our community. Because we almost had better people on school boards than you did on city councils because they knew how important the education system was. That began to change in 1977 when the funding for schools went to the state. As a result, now all they do is kind of oversee the schools. They don't innovate, and they don't believe they're accountable because the money primarily comes from the state. And the state kind of decides what the priorities are, kind of sets the tone, does state standardized testing, and so we get farther and farther away from local control. So I think, in final analysis, we have what we asked for, I guess, which is state-funded schools with weaker, not stronger school board members who are, again, sometimes people who get there and stay a long time, even when they can't show measurable results during their term in office in terms of improved schools, either physically or intellectually, or even in terms of performance after graduation in college or in the workplace. So, if you aren't doing anything about it, why would you stay in the office when you're not solving the problem?
Prestige?
Well, I think there's a whole lot of people hold the school board or the city council or the mayor in high regard. And again, it's a tough job. Who wants it? You're no longer seeing people, young people, they get jobs in corporations, they get jobs in government, they pay good money. Why take the strings and arrows of outrageous fortune and run for office if you got other things to do. Higher paying things with less stress. Other than public service, and public service is the place where you get beat
up. And we've got, by the way, a person has a question. He says, Black Panther took place in Oakland. He's talking about the movie being filmed there. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. Have you seen Black Panther yet?
Absolutely. Ryan Coogler did a wonderful job. I mean, here's the highest grossing film in February and probably the beginning of a whole new franchise by a guy who's 31 years old who started off making a movie called Fruitvale Station.
Mm-hmm. About Oscar Grant.
So, about Oscar Grant. So, you got to take that and be proud that a young man who grew up in Oakland has now become the hottest topic in films in this country.
No, it's something else, and have what could very well be the largest grossing movie in history. I mean, we're only talking about 3 days out, right? And it's already raised.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big moneymaker, and I think that it really is a tribute to the director of the film and people in it, and the studio that made it. That's a great movie, and when I saw the movie at AMC last Friday actually. On the film starts off in Oakland. People in the theater roll out with a great cheer. There's actually that kind of pride in Oakland. People have pride in the city, even though they have misgivings about its government and its leadership.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because did you see it at the Grand Lake?
No, I saw it at AMC.
AMC. Okay.
It was just circumstance.
AMC. Okay.
Yeah, it was just circumstance. I would have gone. The Grand Lake is my favorite theater, but I went with somebody who had tickets for the Grand Lake.
Yeah.
I'm from the AMC.
I saw it out here at the Cinemark 17 here in Fayetteville, and I saw Oakland come up and I clapped. I was the only person in the audience to clap. So, but I didn't care. So,
well, if you've seen it in Oakland, you've been part of a mass demonstration.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's hey, and as Paul Dog says, it's awesome. Born in Oakland, raised in Richmond, great movie. Very proud as a person of color, and so Barry Lee says now to beat Star Wars would be a big achievement. So I gotta ask you, moving from that subject though, and talking about our favorite subject, which is the Raiders. There are, first of all, on Friday, the Joint Powers Authority in closed session took up what it had been doing for the past month, which is negotiations to extend the Raiders' lease. Chris Dobbins on my show said 2020. The Raiders are thinking, they said 2021. The Raiders are thinking 2020. But if you were mayor, would you kick the Raiders out? Because there were some people who were saying, Dobbins said that there were some people who wanted to stick it to the Raiders and just kick them out. But you have more experience working with the Raiders than any elected official in Oakland, and you're not being tapped into. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that you're here to tap into you. Well, what should we do?
Well, first thing we need to make a plan. What we're going to do when the Raiders are off? Will the 80 be there? Will we keep the arena? Will we build a LA Live kind of environment with hotels, convention centers, job creating, living environments? So if we're going to do that, then that timetable should dictate the speed with which we have the Raiders to leave. If we have plans, we're ready to go by 2019 or 2020, and then we have to act as if the Raiders are no longer part of our future. They're making their plan. We got to make ours.
That's a great point. But what if their plan falls? So I get what you're saying is basically if we should have a plan. If theirs falls apart, we should have the plan. Is what you're saying?
We should have a plan either way. But my point was, you can't always be in a situation where you say, "Well, hey, they're not doing anything." We can always go back to Oakland because Oakland has no future. It has no strategy. Nothing's going to happen there for the next 20 years. You can't allow people to take you for granted. We see 40-story apartments being built in Oakland. If you ask me, in 1999 when I left office, was that logical? I would have said, no way. And we didn't plan for that. But now we're saying, why do we keep building these small 4 or 5 story apartment houses when we could have had 30-story apartment houses on the same site and create a more livable downtown? But, again, without strategic planning and long-term thinking, we continue to do what we do, and only the private sector drives the economy, and we have nothing to do with the quality of life that results from that effort.
But it wasn't always that way. We had redevelopment. We were able to better shape the city, right?
Right. Right. The government took away redevelopment.
Yeah, and then Jerry brought it back in another law, but I talked to Annie Campbell Washington. I'm sorry, Annie, I'm going to have to put your name out there, but I talked to her at Oktoberfest and about using Jim Beal out of San Jose's SB 628, which basically, to make a long story short, reintroduces redevelopment. And she said, I'll look into it, and she never did. And none of the council members know about it. And I mean, how did we get to a point where we have, to me, a staff of people that are consistently behind what's happening, and we have analysis paralysis in the city? It's like we analyze a lot, but we don't do anything.
Well, because, not to go smoke of yours, but, you got to have people who are thinking creatively. You got to have people who are thinking about the next step, not the last step. Everybody can't do that. There are some people who have to work on the problem of today. But you got to have some people who are thinking about tomorrow. Mm-hmm. If you're not thinking about tomorrow, you're going to be victimized by it.
Are you saying that we're victimized by it right now?
I think so.
And so, but is that a dystopia?
There have been 10,000 housing units in the city of Oakland in the next 24 months. What the impact of that's going to be in terms of transportation? We're not going to increase mass transit dramatically, other than maybe the bus system. We have no light rail. We have no parking. More and more apartments are being built without off-street parking. So where are people going to park if they have cars? If they don't have cars, how are they going to get from point A to point B? Uber?
Yeah,
maybe. Mm-hmm. But you can't. Uber is a great tool, and maybe it'll be even stronger at the point that you have driverless cars, and that's going to have impact on the economy. A lot of immigrants and poor people and people got a significant education are driving for Uber and making a livable wage for a minute. But things evolve, and we're not preparing the workforce of the future when the driverless cars come in the next 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. What are those people going to be doing? What are truck drivers going to be doing?
Well, I would hope monitoring them so that a satellite doesn't cause a car to crash into an AC Transit bus or something like that,
Mm-hmm. No, that's fine. But my point is, who's thinking about that? Who's looking at the workforce of the future?
I raised my hand. I said, me.
Right. Well, you have to think about that. Sports teams are great. Will Oakland die because the Warriors moved back to San Francisco after 40 years or so, for whatever number of years they did in Oakland? Mm-hmm. No, Oakland won't die, and they'll still have a team in the region. The New York Giants and Jets play in New Jersey. They play in the state of New York. That's the city of New York. And, that's going on for years. So I would tell you that, I wish the Braves were still in the area for the fans to get to them, or even just on occasion. Mm-hmm. But when we brought the Raiders back in 1995, nobody was thinking about what was going to happen in 2018, and they should have been having those discussions with the Raiders and looking at all the different options. And if they got to 2017 and you didn't have the option, you'd be able to look. We already know we made a decision in 2012 that we weren't going to invest any more money and we're going to do something else with that site. Okay, everybody knows, no surprises. You fought the battle. Emotion is no longer an issue, and you realize that you don't own Oakland does not own the Raiders, and if they want to move to a different environment and the NFL is going to back up, they're gone. Yep. We had no other legal basis for that. We could have done a better job of planning and working collectively in partnership and collaboration about what their requirements, demands were going to be in terms of the stadium, and that should have been worked out or not by a date certain. Everybody could have moved on.
How would you have responded, however, if, and I'm asking rhetorical questions, I believe I know you, if you discovered, let's say you were mayor past Jerry Brown all the way up till now, but you encountered a situation where you, not just once, twice, but let's say there were 7 causes of action where you knew the Raiders were not only not acting in good faith, but outright lying to you. For example, saying to you, oh, hey, let's wait and deal with the lease in April. It's January right now. I have the NFL owners meeting coming up. Let's see how the Los Angeles vote shakes out. And then after that, we'll get together. So you're under the impression you're going to get together in April. But what happens between January 16th and April 27th is that Mark Davis, and you find this out, on a news website, is in Las Vegas trying to find land for a stadium there, and you realize, hey, look, he lied to you.
Look, as long as you got cities, counties, states, regions that will pay public money in order to attract and to retain a sports team, and you're in a city, a state, and a region that won't use public dollars to do that, then you know the hand you're dealing with. And so does the owner of that sports franchise. In the case of Warriors, they had private money. They couldn't have moved San Francisco with public money because San Francisco voters weren't going to put that out there. They made a decision. They wanted to be in San Francisco. They got their own financing. They got promotional money from Chase Bank. And they moved. And quite frankly, there was nothing the city could have done about that because they didn't ask for, nor were they interested in Oakland alternatives.
Interestingly, however, I have to point out the Warriors claim that they don't owe us $60 million. What are your thoughts on that? Because Robert Bob says BS, they do. Others say they do.
Robert Bob is right. Mm-hmm. That was a different owner, but that was the understanding in the agreement. They may be able to get out of it. People have won legal battles in the past. But certainly that was the understanding, that they were going to be responsible for the $200 million plus we spent to refurbish the Coliseum, the arena. And when you hear the media saying this is the oldest stadium, it's not. It was gutted completely.
Thank you.
And everything
Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. Could you repeat that, please?
Everything inside that arena and most of what's outside that arena is new, and certainly has been replaced in the last 20-some years.
With that, well, why? I mean, it makes no sense to me because I've had this conversation with our current mayor who rhetorically put out, she says, some people say that we should destroy Oracle Arena. And when I said that, I wanted to crawl through the phone and say, just appear in live and say, what are you saying? But
if you replace it, it will not be replaced. Oakland will no longer have a major indoor sports arena that will hold 18 to 20,000 people. And as a result, we no longer will have major attractions to people in the city of Oakland or in the East Bay to be able to go to without going to either San Jose or to San Francisco, both of which are major transportation nightmares.
See, that's what bothers me, Elihu, is that we call it the MICE industry. It's the meetings, incentives, conventions, and entertainment, MICE. And so all that's just a cute way of saying that you have a lot of hotels and convention spaces and stadiums and arenas. We fall behind on all those categories, and yet it's like when you were mayor, we cared about that. Certainly, we got the convention center, you and Lionel, but then we stopped. We have a convention center we haven't developed in 30 years. Am I right?
Not that. We had a convention center that was poorly conceived in the first place. You don't build a convention center for the whole 2,000 people. That's a local venue. You're going to draw a convention center, you better have something that can hold 5, 10, 20,000 people.
Right.
If you were to do a convention center out at the Coliseum site, use that arena as one of the venues, create hotels, create retail shopping, create nightlife, restaurants, that could be a whole new economic, if not lifestyle, area for development in the city. That's what they ought to do out there. They ought to keep that arena. They ought to build the 80 stadium out there. And they ought to use all that land to create a living environment that includes some sort of housing, but basically will be driven by the fact that it'll be a lifestyle community, again, much like LA Live.
So is this to say that you think Howard Terminal is a bad idea?
Yeah, Howard Terminal doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, you got the railroad track running down the middle of it. There's no mass transit option anywhere near Howard Terminal. Nor is one even being planned or talked about. You can't have an area like that that's isolated. You go to LA Live again, you got metro, you got freeway access, you got all the things that make it a accessible and usable lifestyle area for downtown Los Angeles, and brought back LA downtown.
It looked great.
And now all of a sudden you got to say,
I was just gonna say it looked great for the All-Star game. That's all.
it's right, it looked wonderful. It was wonderful.
Was that?
So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, I mean, all you got to say is you create attraction. You're not able to do it downtown because of decisions that were made over the last 10 years, where you took away the option for a downtown baseball arena at the Uptown site. You have really nothing at the port area. You got stuff down there to develop that's still not utilized because you not create all of the factors necessary to make it a regional attraction. There's a bus station there. And there's nothing there other than a great potential that is yet to be realized. And I don't know whether or not it's too late to make Jackson Square a real destination.
Hey,
it is a sometime destination, but not 24/7.
Do you think it could ever be that? Because I thought that we were trying to head that way. Remember the whole cabaret district, and we moved Yoshi's from Dryers. Remember, that was like 1994.
Again, that's what Harold Ellis did. He created that idea, then didn't have the financing to make it real. And so as a result, that haphazard planning, no implementation, and you got potential but still unrealized. I mean, now the other thing could check that off would be if you were to do Brooklyn Basement. You get another 3,000 to 5,000 people down there. Now all of a sudden, you have critical mass, and that becomes a neighborhood that could have grocery stores and entertainment and maybe bigger movie theater, a number of different things. But you got to create it and you got to connect the dots. You can't just do something here and there and not think about having in between.
Hey, help me with something, because this is a blank I was never able to fill in until now. When we went to ICSC and I gave that presentation to Forest City in '97, and then they came back and we had Paul Whalen come out from Robert A. M. Stern Architects.
Right.
All right. What happened where Jerry Brown took over the project? Did he get a hold of Greg Vilkin? Do you know what happened with that?
It wasn't his idea, and he wasn't interested.
Okay. So he just basically supplanted it with the 10K idea. He just kind of pushed that out of the way.
Pretty much. Oh yeah. And he told me the same thing. He told me, look, he said, "What are you going to do with some of the man around throughout the college when I was chancellor?" And I said, "Well, we don't have a plan." He said, "You don't need a plan." So you think I had a plan when I said 10K? I just said it. We went and did it. Well, I mean, that's wonderful, but it doesn't give you a pathway to the future. It gives you haphazard development, which is now going with reckless abandon without very little planning, but certainly without, again, connecting the dots. So you tell me what downtown Oakland looks like a lot of housing, no shopping, and not a lot of entertainment.
Is that to say then that it's fair to blame the current governor of California for Oakland's homeless problem?
Say it again?
Is it fair to should we blame Jerry Brown for Oakland's homeless problem because of pushing 10K?
No, you blame Jerry Brown. You also have to be able to reality. He did very little about it. When I was mayor, we built a one-stop, which certainly could have served as a foundation for a homeless strategy. But again, that was not his priority, and as a result, he didn't address it.
I have to say,
and even anybody else for that matter after him.
Yeah. And I have to say,
So I'm not blaming Jerry Brown for that.
I have to say, in fairness, that if anyone blames Jerry, then since I did the developer symposium for Jerry, I hold some part of that blame too. But
yeah, but wasn't just him. I mean, it's been 15 years, 11, 12, 14 years. It's 12 years since Jerry was mayor, and what's happened? Can't blame it all on him.
No, that
Problem gotten worse.
How would you want to solve it if you were mayor?
Well, I think first of all, you have to deal with the political reality is that as a community, we do not have a unified position on what you do about the homeless. Some people don't acknowledge it as a comprehensive problem. And you got people with mentally ill, people got addiction, people are just poor and down on the luck because of the cost of housing. And we try to deal with it like we got one solution solves all of it. And it doesn't. You have to say, what are you going to do about the veterans? What are you going to do about people who are the working poor? What are you going to do about people who got addictions, don't want to live in shelters no matter what? And you got to look at it, and then you got to know who is the population. You need to have social workers out there. You need to have people who can tell you not only what the problem is, but what the solution is. And then you need to work on it with the county, the federal government, and the state. But right now, you got piecemeal approaches. And as a result, you got no solution, and you got a problem that's growing by leaps and bounds with gentrification and certainly without affordable housing.
Hey, I want to bring back to our conversation about Steve Lowe and Old Oakland. And Steve was creative of Old Oakland, but from your perspective, how did Old Oakland start?
Well, it started in redevelopment under both John Williams and Lionel Wilson, and then John Redding. And that was to save Victorian businesses and structures in that basically 7th, 8th, 9th below Broadway area. And I think that there was an effort to save those homes. Some of them were moved to places like Victoria and Row. But there's a real sense that they wanted to, that was part of the preservation of Oakland's past, that we have in West Oakland in particular, in some cases around the lake, like the Stanford Kennel House. And now I think we're all very happy that those examples of Oakland Victorian history were preserved. But, again, it was a great idea, and it was just an example of some forward thinking. Whether that was the best location or whether we should have done it somewhere else, you can conjecture. I think almost everyone is glad that those homes were not destroyed and lost forever.
Hey, and then was Glenn Isaacson, remember Glenn? From
sure.
Was he part of the Stork project? I mean, there was Stork and Stork, right? And then there was Glenn Isaacson. Was he also part of Old Oakland? Or is my memory fading? Okay.
Well, there was some involvement with Old Oakland, and you're right. But of course, major problem, Donald major project was City Center. And so whatever, and I know they were involved, but I think on a peripheral basis, it wasn't one of their main efforts.
I remember one thing I'll never forget is when I first started working for you, and remember David Alexander, who created the shopping center concept for Uptown. And I remember we were going through these negotiations, which were, difficult. But you point at the map of Uptown, and you said, because someone had made the remark that it was couldn't be done or was impossible, and you said, I want to do the impossible. And which was inspiring to me because, you use that as a basis to turn me loose. But to which I thank you for.
Jenny's word is unleash you.
Thank you. But looking back now on Uptown, are you satisfied with how it has changed? Has it progressed?
No. Robert Bob and I and others looked at various ways to drive Uptown. What could we do with the Capwell's now Sears building that now has been abandoned by Uber? What did we do with creating a lifestyle community there? And we talked about a theater. We talked about maybe a ballpark. We talked about creating more retail and restaurants in that area, and making, again, at least a 10 to 10, if not 10 to 6, kind of a neighborhood where you got up in the morning, there were restaurants and coffee shops, and there were places to grab a bite before you got on the BART to go to San Francisco, before you went to work in downtown Oakland, and there were going to be residential development around there, movie theaters, the Fox Theater, Paramount Theater for live entertainment, and nightclubs to create, again, basically a 24/7, 365 day a year downtown. Mm-hmm. And somewhere, Jerry Brown lost that with Uptown by thinking if you built subsidized housing where there was a guaranteed profit to Forest City, that somehow that was going to be the catalyst to change that area into a more comprehensive area. Look, things have happened. Again, I don't think they have a plan. I don't think they have the maximum benefit. But again, housing is down there. It's occupied. There's other housing being planned in the Uptown area. It's certainly better than it was, but I don't think it's all that it could have been.
We're on with former Oakland mayor and Peralta Community College Chancellor Elihu Harris. Hey, I got to ask you on that note, continuing the Uptown conversation. You said that Forest City got a guaranteed profit. Can you talk more about that for viewers who don't know about it?
Yeah, Forest City said, we'll build Uptown. We're not going to take the risk. So if you guarantee our profit, we'll build it. And in my understanding was to get $70 million of redevelopment money.
Wow. Was that legal?
So they were very happy with it.
I would hope so.
They no longer had an economic incentive to continue to develop and build Uptown. They made good money to rent. There's no more Forest City involved in Oakland.
So they were trying to take a mini version of what if you remember the Rouse Corporation.
Right.
Remember that? And for those of you who are watching, folks, I'll take you back really quick to 1990 through 90 through 94. And the Rouse Corporation.
I was there to start about 88.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then remember about 1990, the managing partner of Ross was killed in a plane accident in Massachusetts.
Michael Sperry died in a helicopter crash. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, he was in an aircraft accident.
Yeah. But my point is that was going to be a 2 million square foot shopping center in Uptown, and there was some artist rendition or model, Elihu, maybe it's still around somewhere, where, remember you had the Grove Shafter coming down from the Caldecott Tunnel, and then you quite literally would drive into the downtown?
Right.
Yeah. That am I right? That was the original concept, right?
That was the concept, and it was a great concept, and we even followed up with people who own the Capitol and Macy's and talked to them about retaining the Capitol and building a Macy's. We did not have a first-class, when the Capitol store, we did not have a first-class department store. Now, we all know department stores have basically gone downhill since then. So, in the long term, I'm not sure that was a major loss. But now we have no semblance of a physical or historical downtown. And I think that we certainly lost retail dollars. And I certainly think that it robbed Oakland of a critical mass of retail and entertainment and housing.
Now we're in a situation where it seems like we're almost in limbo and there's nobody pushing us forward into the future. Would you be interested in coming back? When I say coming back, let me rephrase that. Has anyone approached you, and I sort of know the answer to this question, but maybe something has changed. Has anyone approached you and said, hey, former Mayor Harris, we'd like to have you head up a task force or a board or something like that?
No. I talk to people, I talk to groups, but certainly there's been no formal or structured process to which I've been asked or included.
That's got to change. We got to get you out there. Just,
Well, no, but it's not just me. It's not just me. As you know, what I love about Oakland is Oakland historically has been very collaborative, and people love Oakland, care about Oakland, and went to incredible depth trying to keep it as a connected community.
mm-hmm.
We never wanted to be San Francisco. That wasn't our goal. We wanted Oakland to be a town, and a town, not a city, in the sense that we wanted the neighborhoods to connect. We wanted diversity. We wanted a city where people can walk and talk and know their neighbors. And, I think that still ultimately is the goal for most people in Oakland. We don't want to be, again, San Francisco, with just high-rise buildings and where people don't know each other, they just live next door to each other.
Hey, out of respect for your time, I have a question that we'll start to wind up. But how are we doing on time, by the way?
You tell me, it's your show.
Oh, cool. I'm happy to have you then. I'll keep going because this is fantastic. What are your thoughts? I have Robert Bob coming on tomorrow for the first time, and I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about, as we call him, Mr. Bob? And what are your thoughts about his performance in Oakland?
Well, so one, what I liked about Robert Bob was he was aggressive, he was confident, and so as a mayor, he was very challenging because Robert Bob would often try to get ahead of me, and I felt that I should be in the head because I was elected. I had the elected mandate, but Robert Bob wasn't sitting there waiting for anyone to take the reins and to push ideas forward. I thought the fact that we had that kind of healthy competition was a good thing, although sometimes I was a little out of sorts because Robert had the power of city management, and I had certain power, which is policy and budget, but I didn't have the authority to administer or implement many of the ideas that I had.
Do you think that it would have been better if you had gotten your version of Strong Mayor through rather than Jerry's version?
Yeah.
And can you talk about your version because it was different, right?
Well, a little bit different. I mean, actually, I would have been happy to have Robert as a city administrator because I know he was clearly focused on implementation. But when you're working with the council manager form of government, the implementation very seldom comes from the mayor or the council because you have dissipated authority among the electors. Mm-hmm. 5 votes decides everything. There's no executive who has the ability to say, we're going in that direction, or we're going to do this, or here's our 10 priorities for this year. You had 5 people, all of which is like 10 blind men and the elephant, trying to describe what we're looking at and what they were going to do about it. And as a result, you had a lot of frustration, a lot of conversation, but often less action than was desirable. And so I like the fact that Robert Bob was aggressive. It was frustrating because I did not have the control of the administration that I would like to have had to implement the strategic plan and other things that we had developed early during my term there.
In that context, how would you evaluate, I'm trying to say, how would you evaluate Craig Koshin versus Robert Bob? Craig Koshin was the city manager before, Robert.
Craig Koshin was a more traditional city manager. He was a wonderful guy, family guy,
yes.
Loved Oakland.
Yes.
And he'd been brought up and developed by Henry Gardner, who preceded him as the city manager. But he was a traditional city manager. On the other hand, Robert Bob was more of a kind of almost a mayor / administrator in his temperament and in his drive. But I wanted to get things done as well. And certainly as a result, I felt that we were often, I won't say at odds, but certainly unnecessarily conflicted because we had roles that overlapped in some cases, but ultimately we had the reins of government through administration in his hands.
Would you rather, let me change this another way. Would you say that in all of this, there was a tension? I remember when Robert Bob became city administrator, Jerry Brown, one mayor. We had you and you going through transition, which impacted me, of course, and we had John Russo as our first elected city attorney. But did John broker it to where Jerry and Robert got along? What was his role in that? Because it seemed like there was a little tension there.
John, as you remember, did not favor the city management form, form of government.
Right.
Because he was a city council member, and John, quite frankly, and I think, in all honesty, favored as much power as he could retain in his office as a city council member. Mm-hmm. So he did not support strong mayor form of government. Then he cut a deal with Jerry Brown to create an elected city attorney, and created his own niche of power and authority. And the trade-off was he would support the modified strong mayor form of government that Jerry Brown developed. And Jerry Brown, quite frankly, didn't want more power as much as he did not want to have to go to city council.
I have to say, folks, Jerry Brown was the polar opposite of my boss here, Elihu Harris, because Mayor Harris, his boss, would sit there at council. Didn't matter how long the meeting was, okay? Every council meeting. Jerry Brown, I think I saw him at one meeting, at the committee maybe twice, 3 times, So now you're basically telling me that was like by design. He just wanted to get away from the heathens or something, or?
I remember after one long 3 or 4 hour city council meeting, I gave him a ride home back down to his compound at Jacqueline Square, and he said, "Man, how often does that happen?" I said, "Every week." He said, "That's the first thing I gotta get rid of." He said, "That would drive me nuts."
I have to say that, it's interesting because when Gene Kwan was mayor, when Jerry was mayor, he barely showed up. And then when Dellums was mayor, he barely showed up, maybe once in a while. Gene Kwan actually showed up to quite a few council meetings as mayor.
Right.
And then
he sat there. He sat there. She didn't have a vote, and she spoke on. I don't know how that worked out because she wasn't a member of the council. Mm-hmm. But I know that she often would speak on administrative issues. In where the city administrator normally would speak. So she was able to work out some accommodation that allowed her to sit in the meeting at least as she chose, even though she had no vote and no formal role.
Do you think, other than yourself, how would you evaluate the mayors that have come past you? Who is the best out of the group?
Well, I think Jerry Brown was a celebrity mayor. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who's been governor, who was nationally known because he run for president a number of times. And I think as a result, Oakland embraced him as, again, a celebrity. And that he was going to bring a lot of attention and bring a lot of resources to the city, which I don't think he did. But he did, I think, make him feel better about himself, some of which was racial, some of which was, again, just the fact that he'd been a former governor. Why would a former governor come and be mayor of Oakland? He thought it was a real honor, if not tribute, to the city that he felt that was an important enough office to bring him back into elected politics. Secondly, I think that Ron Dellums, I think, really didn't know what he was getting into. When you've been a city council member of Berkeley, and he knew kind of the diatribe and the argument, but I think Sean Mayer, after being in the Congress for 28 years, was more than he bargained for. Maybe because of age, maybe because of temperament. But I told him, basically, mayor is being in charge of retail government, not wholesale government. It's like working at Safeway, not Costco.
Hey, I'm also curious. We were talking about form of government, and we talked about the city attorney, and I can't forget Jane Williams in that context. And even though I didn't like how she handled my contract, how would you evaluate Jane's performance as city attorney for Oakland?
Well, besides the personal things, I think that she ran a professional office. Mm-hmm. I think Joyce Hicks, her chief deputy, was a very good operational support for Jane. I think that, again, Jane was not a risk taker. Jane was very much by the book. Mm-hmm. I don't think in many instances she was as creative as she might have been, but by the same token, she had good lawyers. Yeah. And I think sometimes they were not politically in the way that I wish they'd be political, in terms of being a little more sensitive to a resolution of conflict. But, again, I think she was up to the task, but she wasn't political. When the shift was made to a elected city attorney, I don't think she was well equipped to just go into her personality.
Yeah, it was a different way with them. And I remember Joyce Hicks in particular as a friend who was very professional and sometimes a little too, I thought, I don't want to say that. I would just say basically she was very cautious, perhaps to the nth degree, which is at the end of the day, I suppose, what you want. How would you evaluate in that context, since Barbara Parker came out of that school? She worked for Jane and she worked for John. How would you evaluate Barbara Parker?
I like Barbara personally. Mm-hmm. I think that the voters seem to be satisfied with her. I think that, again, when you have a city attorney, the question is, even without term limits, how do you measure their effectiveness, or do you always kind of say, well, they're good enough? I don't know that there is an evaluative tool that says, how good is she doing? How well is she utilizing the resources, both voting and financial resources, compared to her predecessors or her colleagues as city attorneys, and then begin to evaluate how well she's doing. And I have no tools for evaluation. Again, I think she has some good lawyers, many of whom have been there for 20 years or more, like Celso Ortiz and others. So, again, I strongly think of judgment without some kind of agreed upon evaluative tool that allow you to see, is she winning more than she's losing? A lot of people are not happy about that Elaine Brown, Desi Brooks case in terms of damages. But again, you can't take one case and use that to determine the overall effectiveness of the city attorney or the attorney in her office.
Hey, by the way, Dan Kalb is running for assembly, right?
Yes.
Do you think he can win?
Mm-hmm. He might. There are 9 candidates, and most of them are not particularly known outside of either the district. I think Dan Kalb is well known in the rest of Oakland, much less Dan Ambrose. So again, you're not talking about people in any of the 9 candidates who are particularly well known. So the question is, like for example, the leading fundraiser in that Stony district is Buffy Wick. Right. Buffy lived in that district 18 months ago, and she's already raised over $500,000.
Yep. I have to tell Buffy, I met when I was a volunteer for the Obama campaign, and she was Obama outreach coordinator. So I've known Buffy a long time. She lives in Rockridge in Oakland. She's a great person, fantastic person. Yeah. You think she's a shoo-in?
No, not at all. Again, I don't think many people know Buffy. You know Buffy.
Yeah.
I never met Buffy. She's running in Richmond, El Sobrante, El Cerrito, Albany, Berkeley, North Oakland, West Oakland. I just don't think that many people know her.
I think you're right. Yeah.
The question is, can she do it with mail? I don't think she's going to have a whole lot of volunteers. But the fact that you work for Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama doesn't necessarily mean people are going to work for you.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a thought, I think, even with Peggy, when she was thinking about at large, she thought maybe that's a little bit of the Obama dust would help her out, in that situation. It didn't happen.
Right. I mean, Obama's been out of office now 3 years. 2 years. 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And I think that she was not a high profile, it didn't help Hillary Clinton that much. Obama probably would have beat Trump. So, Obama's coattails, when he lost the House in 2010, demonstrate his coattails are not that long.
Yeah, because you're right.
How Buffy, I think most people don't know her. Most people don't even know she worked for Obama. Now, she may be able to communicate that in her mail and her campaign, but, she's got roughly about 16 weeks or less to do that.
I think Buffy's mistake, in retrospect, is that there were, and I'd love to know what you think about what I'm about to say, but I'll just say it. I feel that there are a number of people in the local Democratic Party in the Bay Area who felt that they could write their ticket to Washington was already written. And they had their office picked out in the White House and the federal government offices, and it was a done deal. They were going to win. And I believe one of those people was Buffy, because she was working for Hillary Clinton. And then then the wheels came off. And so
that happened in 2000 with Al Gore. I think Jerry Brown. After getting elected mayor, thought that he was headed back to Washington for a cabinet position.
I remember that. Yeah, and it didn't happen because Gore didn't win, because we had the Chad thing in 2000 where we had the votes. But I say that because I think in Buffy's case, what happened was, and I'm just looking at this from afar because I haven't had a chance to talk with her yet, and I should, but she seemed to get stuck with the fact that Hillary was no longer the popular candidate people thought she was. And you had the whole Bernie Sanders contingent that was pissed off. And here she's
you remember Bernie Sanders won in Alameda County.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it seemed like now she's caught in trying to she's trying to reposition what her legacy was. Is it because she'd thrown out the Obama part?
I for one don't know what she stands for. I don't know what she's done other than working as a campaign staffer to Obama and Hillary Clinton, and that alone is certainly not a basis for electing anyone to representative office in state government.
Wow. So that is a ringing indictment. To say the least. I think, folks, if you're listening to this and you need a campaign consultant, you would be stupid not to call former Oakland mayor and California Assemblyman Elihu Harris and telling you he is got a political antenna like no other. Hey, speaking of political antennas, we are very close to when the Transbay Transit Center opens, right? Isn't that June? I think it's June? Yeah. Are you going to the groundbreaking?
Well, I have been invited. I started only going to San Francisco. Willie Ballard give me a visa, and nothing has changed.
I talked about that because I remember when you dispatched me to work on trying to get a high-speed rail terminus in Oakland.
Right. We almost got it.
Yeah, thank you. We almost got it. That was a lot of fun. I felt like, I don't know how to evaluate that. Part of me thinks that we were ran by Willie Brown. How should I think about that?
Well, several things. One was politics. We did not have a governor who wanted it in Oakland. There was no federal government who wanted it in Oakland. And they thought that basically the logical terminus would be between L.A. and San Francisco, although I think a more direct route and probably a more successful route might have been even through San Jose and up the corridor to Oakland, or even have the terminus in San Jose and allow BART to be the connecting rod to the rest of the Bay Area, and in fact have BART circle the bay. You'd be able to get on BART in San Jose and go up to like Vallejo or maybe even in the rest of Solano County and some way, maybe through a tunnel to get to Marin County. But we didn't do that. I think that from my perspective, I don't know if I'll ever ride it, even if it gets built, because I'd rather drive down Interstate 5 and have my car, particularly if they have driverless electric cars. I have a car when I get there. But although they're expanding mass transit in LA, but you still need a car in Los Angeles of some kind.
Hey,
so I don't know. I've taken Metro bus and other non-private vehicles. I was flying to LA, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not in the long term that will be an acceptable way to go.
Who is the hero in high speed rail? Is it Ron Dearden? Is it who do we go look back and either thank or blame for this whole thing?
I think the heroes and the failures are connected. They should have built multiple tracks. They should have circled the entire bay, and they got all 9 of the area counties to participate. Maybe even the valley, although that would have been a little bit far-fetched, and certainly allow for it to be connected through Livermore and or Stockton. I think that would have been a better way to go. But I think that the minimum they should have done was make sure that you'd be able to go from Pleasanton right under the bay or over the San Mateo Bridge to San Francisco Airport. Same thing to the Oakland Airport. Same thing to San Jose Airport. So you've been able to use rail as a way to connect you to downtown centers in San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco, to transportation centers, including railroads and airports. We didn't plan it that way. And we never saw development being as extensive as Antioch and Brentwood and places like that. And maybe that's a lack of vision. We should have at least made a vision for that possibility by buying the rights of way and creating enough space to have more than one train in each direction. As you know, those trains coming from Brentwood and Bay Point are so crowded by the time they get to Oakland, there's nowhere to sit. There's nowhere to stand.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and not only that, the BART goes back to Warm Springs, and I believe it's going to go to Milpitas in a month or so, something like that.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I've seen the new cars. The cars are nice. I happened to make a video one. I coaxed my way on it, but my God,
I know that.
Oh yeah, but BART is it's become huge, enormously huge. Hey, so
and that's because of the out-migration. People got to get back to work. I mean, if you've ever seen 5:80 in the morning and listen to cars coming over the Altamont, it takes on a bad day, it takes you an hour and a half to 2 hours to get from Tracy to Doug.
Jeez, that's outrageous.
And you're talking about another hour and a half or so into San Francisco. So you're talking about 3.5 hours each way, or 7 hours. And you're coming from a desk, though, it's going to be even farther. So now you're talking about 7 hours a day driving into downtown Oakland or San Francisco.
Jeez,
and look how life is that.
That's absolutely. That sounds like we're headed toward a air car or something. You know, is the next step.
Well, we better do something. We better do something because you're coming down Interstate 80 from Fairfield or Vacaville. In fact, I was talking to a city council member in Sacramento. There are 180,000 people who make at least one trip a week from Sacramento into the Bay.
Hey, whatever happened to the whole jobs housing balance thing that the Bay Area Association of Governments was supposed to be pushing? Remember that? Way with Ray Brady and all those guys?
Remember, Association of Governments has no power.
True.
It's a planning agency that has no power.
And so basically, it was nice to have the idea, but you're saying it didn't catch on.
Well, the only way that Associated Governments has any power is that they can get the legislature to take up and create a regional plan or something, but it has no power over the local government or the county that they got. So, there you go. It's a wonderful talk mechanism, but it's like having a year-round constant of government, but nothing that they could actually implement other than like MTC, which has financial control over many of the transportation dollars.
Hey, I got to ask you, I'm going to close just out of respect for your time, and I don't want to milk it too much. But in closing, is it a good idea, and this is something that I get asked a lot, and I think it is, but I want to hear your take. Is it a good idea to build a stadium and convention center on spec? In other words, okay, we lose the Raiders, but then we have something built that shows that we've got an edifice that's state-of-the-art. We can get an expansion team. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's not going to happen. It doesn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing you're going to be able to do is try to build with private dollars a baseball stadium at the Coliseum site and keep the arena with some minor improvements, put in hotels, condos / apartments, convention center facilities, retail and recreational activities, whether they're movies and nightclubs, and restaurants, and create a destination venue for people in the East Bay who don't want to cross the bridge to go to San Francisco to have fun.
Hey, Elihu, I'm going to have you back, and next time I'm going to have you back live in a venue, and we can get some other folks around because it never ceases to amaze me the depth and breadth of your experience in California politics and development, and the fact that you're still a young man basically and have a lot to contribute. And I think people should hear that, and I would hope that you come back and share your wisdom with us again.
Well, then, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your contributions. But often I think a lot of people resent the fact that you were young and aggressive. They did not like your youth or your aggression, which did not stop you, which made them even angry.
You know what it was? You know what it was? They didn't like the fact that I was black, young and aggressive. They don't. No. They didn't like.
Okay. So you were a victim of 3 strikes without going to prison.
Exactly. Now here's the curse. So some people think I'm like 30, So I'm still in that. I'm still in that.
Yeah, you're still youthful. You're still aggressive, and you're still black. So I guess they've not won the battle with Zinni Abraham.
No, it's like I don't think I ever told you this, but it's worth repeating. I remember when I wanted to run the Coliseum. You went to Ignacio, who was still pissed off that I defended you and embarrassed him in the papers, said no. And so I talked to Robert Bob, and he said, go talk to Bill Claggett, who was over economic development, because I wanted to run that too. Remember that? And so Bill and I are having lunch at Max's Opera Cafe. And Bill basically says, okay, well, Zinni, you talk like you think you know everything. And I said, Bill, I've talked like this since I was 6 years old. Do you have something against a black guy who uses the Queen's English and thinks he's, got some marbles upstairs? I mean, that's how our lunch went. And so I'm bummed, and I'm headed back to, I had the office on the 11th floor over there and at City Hall. And I happened to run into Robert, right? I was going out. He was coming in. He goes, well, how'd it go with Claggett? And I said, it was awful. He said, I talk like I think I know everything. And Robert said, you do. He said, he cracked me up. He said, you're young, you're black, you're a threat. And Oakland's a crowd barrel town. They like to pull you down. And I said, Mr. Bob, just because of that, I'm gonna take that job. That's how I'm gonna stay.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you made a lot of contributions. I like this show. One of the few voices that allows us to connect on what's going on in Oakland, the East Bay. So much success, and continue to speak out and speak up, because we need to hear you.
Yeah, thank you, and God bless you. We'll do it again, man. I'll see you when I get back.
All right. Okay, man. Have a great evening to all your listeners and people who are following closely. They're getting information that other people don't even know about.
You got it. Hey, folks, I'm going to stick around. We're going to talk a little bit more Las Vegas, because I know you guys asked for some updates, and I'll give them to you. Hey, Elihu, thanks a lot, man. I'll see you.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
You got it, man. See you. So, former mayor Oakland, Elihu Harris, my boss, I still call him boss to this day. And that was we had a lot of fun. In Elihu's office, it was structured differently than offices under a strong mayor. We had 27 staff members, including policy advisors. I was economic development. I was Elihu's. My title was economic advisor. And as Elihu said to me when he hired me, he was making the pitch to hire me. He said, "You're going to have them run everything from redevelopment to the Raiders." And so I was responsible for, and if you're listening to this and you are in Las Vegas, you get a picture of my history, right? I was responsible for watching the Raiders to see if the Raiders were complying with the master lease agreement. Among other things, within the agreement, there was a clause in the original master lease agreement such that the Raiders were not supposed to badmouth the deal, okay? You couldn't get on television and start spouting off about how you didn't like the deal or whatever, all right? That was right there in black and white. On October 4th, I believe, if memory serves, it was a Sunday morning on NFL, what they used to call NFL Live, on NBC, because NBC hosted the AFC games. Al Davis violated that. And I told the man you just heard about that by a memo, which I still may have at home someplace, years later, right? That was 97. But that's the kind of that I did that. I was contacted by Alo Casal, who is Al Davis' right hand, because Mr. Locasal wanted to reestablish the 49er Raider preseason games, but he didn't want it to look like it came from us, okay? So he came to me. And my job essentially was to a large extent a political fix-it person. That's what I did. I did that. I did economic analysis. I did real estate investment analysis. I even put together development deals to assist in the movement of a project. For example, I tried to get, and I came this close to getting Frank Robinson and Magic Johnson to buy the Oakland Athletics. That too was in 1997, and it didn't happen. But that just gives you an idea of what I did. Also, I represented the Mayor Harris, on the Community and Economic Development Agency. And in those days, the agency system was new. What I mean by that is we had a morning meeting of our committee, the Community Economic Development Agency Committee, or Community Economic Development Committee, excuse me. Then we had the Public Works Committee, which is chaired by Desley Brooks today, and so on, right? But in those days, the mayor could designate people that he wanted to represent him at each meeting. So, of course, I was put in charge of representing Mayor Harris. I was his proxy at the Community and Economic Development Agency meetings. And my job was to represent the mayor's views. So every Monday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, remember councils was Tuesday night those days. Sometimes it's Monday night now and Tuesday night. But then it was just Tuesday night. Every Monday at 2 o'clock, the staffers would get together at the mayor's office, large conference room, and we would go over the council agenda for the upcoming day. And we would shoot to Elihu what our areas on the agenda were. In other words, our concerns. And what we would do is, even prior to that, we meet with the chief of staff. That was Nicole. And we would meet, and Nicole would say, okay, so what do you want to go over when we meet next week? Because we would do this week in advance and know that, because the agenda came out Thursday. So that evening, by the close of business that day, we knew what we were going to mention or cover at staff, and we had the weekend to prepare for that, okay? And so by Monday, we were ready. So we would go in, shoot Elihu a policy issue. We knew the details behind it. We give him the bullet points. He would make a determination how he wanted that, how he would handle it. Because remember, the mayor was presiding over the council in those days, and that's what we did. Okay, and each policy item had been encapsulated within it a story. I mean, there was, for example, Ethel Long Scott of the Women's Economic Empowerment Program. That was her nonprofit, who needed a loan, and I helped her, straighten out some problems there. I helped Alacosal with respect to the Florida preseason game. That's how I met NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. He was then the National Football League's executive vice president for football operations. Okay, so that's where my professional life started. Well, unofficially. Officially, my professional life started when I was intern for the Fort Worth Planning Department. But that's how that started. Now, okay, a lot there to unpack, and I hope if you are just tuning in and you're thinking, gee, what I miss, after this is done, you can go back and give a listen. It was a lot of fun to talk with Elihu. I always feel like I'm reminiscing when I'm talking with him. Now, as far as the latest Las Vegas news, well, today is President's Day, and generally with their schedule, you're not going to see them, working. Okay, and that's just not there. The next meeting of the authority is March 1st at 9 o'clock in the morning at Clark County Commission Chambers. And as of right now, there is no agenda posted, no meeting minutes, no background materials. We still have the development agreement that's outstanding. Now, in terms of news that's related to it, there is something related to it, but it's indirectly related, okay? And it's very important. It's extremely important. I don't know where this is going to go, but there are people who believe that something could happen. I absolutely have no idea. I really don't. The something, basically, is that Kim Sinatra has alleged to, in a way, have helped Steve Wynn in his escapades. All right, that is the allegation. Okay, that is the allegation. All right. Hey, Eric Young, how are you? Now, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I know I like, there's a blog I've always liked called Vital Vegas. And the guy who writes it always has interesting blog posts. But lately, after this whole Steve Wynn problem, if you will, I hate to use the term, he's really brought it. I mean, he's been all over this. I mean, just absolutely all over it. And what he normally does is cover openings, restaurant openings, nightclubs, that sort of thing, okay? But this time, he's all over the Steve Wynn issue because he knows everybody around town. That's worth knowing. So he says, we round up all the latest scoop about Steve Wynn and his mind-boggling fall from grace. And it is mind-boggling, folks. We're talking about a guy who is, for all practical purposes, Mr. Las Vegas, okay? A man who I've always wanted to meet, still want to meet, and whose vision created the modern Las Vegas as we know it today. And so, hey, well, Richard Hike, sorry you missed Elihu. How are you? Anyway, I'm going to repeat what I was reading. But he says, we round up all the latest scoop about Steve Wynn and his mind-boggling fall from grace in recent weeks, including news about what Wynn Resorts projects are likely to move forward when Paradise Park, but without a hotel, and which ones could be shelved. We've also got exclusives about Lucky Dragon and SLS Vegas, Las Vegas, somebody has to have exclusives in case that wasn't clear. And so talks about the, it's got his podcast there, but I would have to actually play the podcast to hear that, and that's a copyright violation, so I'm not going to do it. So I'll just cut to the chase, all right? Kim Sinatra is on the Stadium Authority, okay? And she is a legendary figure because if you're thinking, hey, is she related to? The answer is yes. Okay, so she's big time. But she also may be in a position that causes her to be, taken. I don't honestly know what kind of punishment could come of this. I don't. I only know there's talk that she, that she looked at, that she was involved in some kind of way in Wynn's affairs. And there's an article on the Review Journal from the 15th, and it reads, lawyers Okada thought deal would lead to loan from Wynn Resorts, and it says the lawyers told District Judge Elizabeth Gonzalez in Las Vegas on Wednesday that both Chief Executive Officer Steve Wynn and General Counsel Kim Sinatra said they would seriously consider the possibility of Wynn Resorts lending the businessman money. Sinatra told Okuda in a May 2011 letter. I'm opening this, okay? Excuse me. Waiting for this to scroll. One of these slow opening pages. You're in it. Yes. All right. Says that the lawyers told, I got that part, all right? Sinatra told Okada, according to the Review Journal, think about that. Okay, now think about that. It's the Review Journal, which is owned by a casino owner, right? Just saying, putting this stuff out about a rival casino owner, right? Anyway, Sinatra told Okada in a May 2011 letter that Mr. Wynn was absolutely committed to a serious exploration of a company loan. Wynn later said in a deposition that he told Okada the board would see if we could do it, according to Wednesday's testimony. That's the promise on which Mr. Okada relied when he signed the waiver and consent to allow Ms. Wynn to sell her shares, okay? And so they're claiming there's a conspiracy here. I don't know. It's a bit dicey and complicated, but that's also not the direct. That article doesn't square with what I read in the other blog, which basically says, hey, there's a problem here. Here's the Boston Globe reporting problems with Wynn Casino go deeper than the man. The Wynn Resorts president who replaced Wynn as CEO and Kim Sinatra, the company's general counsel, were both at Wynn Resorts when it applied for its Massachusetts gaming license and failed to disclose the $7.5 million investment. Specifically, that $7.5 million that went to, as a settlement to the woman who was complaining that Steve Wynn, had done some things to her that, he shouldn't have done. So that's that issue. Now, does that affect her position on the stadium board? I don't know. But the bigger question is, given the tightness of the town, who else may be involved in helping Steve in a way that the legal system may find questionable, who happens to be on the Las Vegas Stadium Authority? And right now, the answer I have is I don't know. I don't know. I do know that this is not the best looking situation right now. Okay. Malconton says, I was taking a look at the stadium development agreement today. I see mention of a very interesting design build agreement, which was discussed back in February. I can't find it. Have you seen it? I haven't looked for it, so I will see if it's either there, or if not, if it's pending. If sometimes these documents, if something isn't ready, they'll mark it pending, and then wait for the actual document to be printed, written, and then installed into the master. Okay, that could be the case here. So, but to answer your question, no, I have not seen it. I have not seen it. There you go. See. All right. I think, folks, in the interest of time, because I've been on now almost 2 hours. Woo, yeah. We started at 11. No, 11. Well, I started with Elihu 11:21. I started the stream at 11:35. So it's now 1:26 in the morning. So yeah, and I'm fading. I got to get some sleep because tomorrow, folks, we have Robert Baum. And I'm really excited to talk to Robert about the Oakland downtown that almost was. How we almost got a downtown baseball stadium for the Oakland Athletics. Tell your friends. Tell your Romans. Tell your countrymen, please. Please. All right? But right now, I am going to shuffle off to Babyland Buffalo. All right? So thank you all very much for tuning into and making Zenny 62 tonight very successful. Again, Robert Bob tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock in the East. That's out here. See you guys. Watch horror films. Keep America strong. See you later. Thanks.